Nanty Glo is a small town located in Cambria County with a population of 2,400. This is my hometown.
That time in the early to mid 60s was like every small town in Cambria County with the coal mines flourishing. It was self-sufficient.
This statue represents the foundation of Nanty Glo, which was once a boomtown due to the coal mining industry.
There were 4 car dealerships. Several people were in the business of doing television and television repair, appliances, that kind of thing. There was no need to go out of town for anything. Basically, the only time that people went out of town would have been for school shopping or perhaps some Christmas shopping in Johnstown. But everything else was available right in these small towns when the coal mines were really going full blast, so to speak.
This was the location of Bob Simmer's Ford car dealership, later purchased by Freedom Ford until they relocated. This was the location of Lamantia Dodge. Both the Simmers family and the Lamantia family were major contributors to the town for providing jobs.
The schools at the time were full. Every room was packed. St. Mary's parochial school had 50 to 60 children in every class. The public schools actually had a couple of homerooms in each grade because of the number of students. That's how many people were living in town at the time. I believe Nanty Glo had the second biggest population to Johnstown in Cambria County at the time. I don't exactly remember the population, but I believe the only borough or only town in Cambria County with more people was Johnstown. So you can see it was a town that the coal mines had going, and that was the local income for the families.
These are the houses on Christoph Street that were built for the coal mining families. And there is a more close-up view.
Okay, so Nanty Glo from in the early 1960s, when I came from northern Cambria, which was then Spangler, was a town that was full of hustle and bustle. All the business fronts were filled. Our store at the time, which was the 5 and 10 and grocery store in the Cummins building, that was the only empty storefront in Nanty Glo. When we went in, every storefront in town was now full.
This is the current location of Anthony, who happens to be my grandfather's store. Cummins' Hardware was the previous location.
There was a movie theater where the post office is now. There was a drugstore. There were several different 5 and 10s. There were 2 grocery stores. There were 2 furniture stores. It was just a busy town. The coal mines were booming. The mines paid every 2 weeks. You could tell when they paid as the town became very active and there was a lot of money spent.
These are the C&I homes where the people who worked for the railroad company lived.
There was a bowling alley built in the early 60s. The Moose, where it is at now, was a bigger building, and there was actually a 4-lane bowling alley in the Moose at the time.
Rite Aid's location is where the bowling alley used to be.
So in the 1970s, the town was still going pretty strong. The second most employed in town were the steel workers. The steel industry was still going well in Johnstown. It employed a lot of Nanty Glo people, which brought a good income into the borough. The school built the new school where it sits today, and I believe it opened in 1970. They combined Nanty Glo, Vittendale, and also Blacklick Township, which is now Blacklick Valley. I believe that happened in 1970. I believe the first graduating class was in 1970, where the school sits today.
Right up the road from Blacklick Valley High School is the elementary.
So the 70s, everything sort of peaked at that time. The flood occurred. The Johnstown flood of 77 also affected Nanty Glo, as the lower half of the town was washed out, as were many communities in Cambria County with that flood. Most of them never fully recovered. So that was a blow in 1977 to a lot of the small communities, which led into the 1980s, and the mining industry started to decline. Bethlehem mines closed several. I believe they closed the Nanty Glo mine in 1981, and that led to much of the town's demise as far as working in the borough with a good income. Then, of course, many of the miners were getting up in age. Many retired at that time. So the town experienced a decline along with the coal mines. That got into the 90s. The business district declined. The town no longer was self-sufficient in a sense of the car dealerships, and I believe we're down to two, Lamantia's and the Simmers Ford, and the others had closed. There was not much in the way of storefront businesses at the time. The town was experiencing a decline along with the decline of the coal industry. We got into the 1990s in the year 2000 area, and the big box stores started to come into play, the Walmarts of the world and Lowe's and so forth, and that took a lot of business from the small towns as people drove to go to these big box stores, and it left most small towns with one or no grocery stores or one or no lumber yards that had been there for many, many years when the towns were flourishing. So that is pretty much where that 40 to 50 year range from the 60s to about the year 2000 to the turn of the century happened. And it also, we saw a decline in the population that went along with it, and a decline in the enrollment of the school districts that also went along with it, because the mining industry wasn't there to employ the people who had the children in the schools. So there was that decline that you saw that went hand in hand with the population and the school districts. It pretty much led through that time frame until actually where we're at today, as many of the small school districts struggle just to stay afloat, as the population, where I remember Nanty Glo classes being 140 or 150 graduating, along with many other small school districts, with that number down into 30, 40, or 50 graduates. That went along with the decline of the coal industry and also the steel industry. So that is how the small towns went from being boom towns to where they are now as small towns, very few businesses, maybe a couple of small restaurants and that kind of thing, that has made it through that rough period of time and have survived. But it was a struggle to stay for business to stay alive, as the town's population declined with the coal industry and the decline of the steel industry, and the jobs that went along with those.
This is where the coal from the mines is located. Coal trucks still get their coal from here today. Excel is where the first Sheets in town was. Nanty Glo also has the Ghost Town Trail, which was once a railroad. There is the park and pool. This is the pool portion. This is the park portion. There is also another park in town. Here is the baseball fields where a lot of Blacklick Valley's sporting events are held. Here are some other businesses in town. Here is Pencrest Bank. There's a Dollar General and a mainline pharmacy. And here is Ameriserve Bank. Here is a funeral home. There is the American Legion. Here is the Ebanjif Clinic. Marlene's Pizza. Here is the police department and the fire hall. Coming up is Poppy's Flowers. Then is the public library. Next is St. Nicholas Parish. Then the Church of God, the First Baptist Church, which burned down a couple years ago and was rebuilt. Here is a church that has been closed down. This is the Methodist Church. Here is the Ukrainian church that is closed down. Then is Christian Missionary Alliance, which is a Protestant church. Here is the Church of the Nazarene. Then is St. Mary's Parish. Directly beside St. Mary's Parish is where the convent used to be after the original convent that was connected to St. Mary's was torn down. Here is the St. Mary's Cemetery.